In this video, I'll discuss the steps in finishing up your solar system project. Our objectives will be to back up the tutorial project, then expand and modify the project to make it your own, gather screenshots, create the final builds, compress the builds for distribution, and publish the project on the internet. And finally, provide the URL to the location of your project for assessment. Okay, the first thing that I want to do is to create a backup of my project. If I go ahead and minimize Unity here and navigate to my project folder, your project folder includes everything in your project. So the way you create a backup is to simply duplicate the project folder. Now, one thing to notice is that while Unity is open, there is a temp folder here. And this includes cache files and things like that. So when you're backing up, you may not want to include that. It's just as extra space. So if I go back into Unity and just simply close it and go back to the file system, you can see that temp folder goes away. So to duplicate my folder, if I back out one level, where I see the solar system project folder, here on Windows, I can simply just right click and choose copy, and then right click somewhere else and choose paste. Now, if you're on the Mac, you can right click and there is a duplicate option that will duplicate the file. Okay, we have our backup created. Notice it's called Solar System-Copy here on Windows. I'm going to go ahead and rename this as Solar System-Backup. And of course, you could put a date, timestamp there, whatever you want. And this basically represents a backup of the tutorial version of the project. So if I ever have a problem with my modifications, I could always go back and not have to recreate all of my work. Now, if we bring up Unity Hub, notice that we only have the solar system project to pick from here. We don't see the backup, but the backup exists on disk. Unity Hub just is a reference to files on disk that you've previously added. So to add the backup, I would have to click the add button and then navigate to that solar system backup folder and select it. And that will add it so I can actually open it from Unity Hub if for some reason I wanted to go back to the backup version and open it. Now, the same thing applies, to any other project. So if I went and I renamed the folder here, Unity Hub will not be able to find it, and I would have to click add to add it back to the list. So if something disappears from Unity Hub, don't freak out. It might still be on your disk. You just need to add it back into Hub. Now let's go ahead and open the solar system project. Now that we've got a backup, we can make our modifications. And follow the instructions in the assignment to make the modifications required. For purposes of brevity, let's pretend that I already made all the modifications to my project. Now, one of the things that the assignment will ask you to do is include a few screenshots. So before finishing up here in Unity, I want to gather some screenshots. In future projects, you'll want to get screenshots of your game. But since the goal of this project is more about learning Unity, I want you to create 2 screenshots of the Unity interface itself. So of the Unity hierarchy, of the scene, and of your project assets. This is to show that you stayed organized and you named your game objects and assets logically. I'll post a reading after this video on how to grab a screenshot on Windows or Mac. But for purposes of this video, I'll use the built-in snip and sketch tool on Windows. So down here in the Windows menu, I'll just search for snip. And there is the Snip and Sketch app. If you are on a Mac, you can use the screenshot tool available in the Application Utilities folder or by pressing Option-Shift-5 on the keyboard. But for now, let me open the Snip and Sketch app. And before I actually grab my screenshot, let me go back to Unity. And I'm going to get a screenshot of the hierarchy. I want to open up all of the game objects that are parent so I can kind of see the parent-child relationship there. Let me go back to the Snip and Sketch tool and let's click New. And here I can, simply select what I want to grab a screenshot of. So let me select across the entire hierarchy. Yours might be longer, so however long it is, select across it. Release, it'll bring it up back in that tool. And then I can just simply click the disk icon here to save it. And I'm going to save it, into my project folder. So let me navigate back to that. And wherever your project is. So I'm going to go back to my solar system. I'm going to go ahead and create a screenshots folder, just like we created our builds folder at the top level of our project. And within that screenshots folder, I'll go ahead and name this my hierarchy screenshot and save that. And then let me go back to Unity, and once again, under the project tab, let me open up a variety of folders or all the folders. Don't open the packages. We're not concerned with that. And then go back to the snip and sketch tool and click new once again. And once again, we'll drag across that entire projects tab and then click save once again. And we'll save this as our project assets screenshot. And for one last screenshot, let's go ahead and do a maximize on play and play our Unity project here. And let me go back to snip and sketch, hit new, and let me just drag across the entire game, and that will grab a screenshot there. And let me save that one as my solar system screenshot. Save that and go back and stop playing. Okay, we've got all of our screenshots. The next step would be to create our final builds of the project, including all the modifications that I hypothetically did, but you actually will do. Just as we did in the build and test video, you'll want to build for Windows, Mac OS, and WebGL. Once again, under File, Build Settings, you'll set all those options. Remember, once again, that when you build, you should set your player settings. Should remember it from the previous video, so you shouldn't have to change these. But for the WebGL, once again, make sure the decompress fallback is checked. For brevity purposes, I'll just use the builds I already created, but you will want to create updated builds once you have completed your modifications. So the next step is to prepare our builds for distribution. To do this, we need to compress them as zip archives. So let me minimize Unity here and navigate into my project and to the builds folder and into that. And we want to turn each folder into a zipped archive or a zipped file. And on Windows, the way we can do that is we can simply right-click on a folder. So let me right-click on the Windows folder and go down to Send to Compressed Zipped Folder. And this will zip that right up. If you're on the Mac, you can right-click, and there is a compress option that shows up in the contextual menu. So now we've got a single zip file of that Windows build that's ready for distribution. It looks a lot like the Windows folder, except it's got a little zipper icon here on Windows. So let's repeat this process for the other builds. So on Mac OS build, let me right-click and say send that to a compressed zip archive. Once again, on the Mac, right-click and just choose the compress option. And we'll do the same thing on WebGL. So now let's publish the game to the internet. There are many ways to host game sites on the internet, including game sites such as GameJolt, Kongregate, and itch.io. We'll be using itch to host our games for this assignment. So using your favorite internet browser, I'll go ahead and launch Google Chrome here and navigate to itch.io. So it's itch.io. And this will bring up the itch.io website. This is a great site to find indie game titles for purchase, or for free. It's also a great way to host your games on the internet. So it's a great way to self-publish your titles. Now, if you already have an account, go ahead and log in up here at the top. If not, you'll need to register to create your own account. So you just go through and fill out your email and so forth, your password, to create your itch account. I already have an account, so I'm just going to click login and log into my account. Once you log in, make sure you're on the dashboard option here at the top. Of course, Itch may modify their website, after I record this video, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along with the steps that I'm taking. So I'm ready to create my solar system project, so I'm going to go ahead and click the Create New Project button here. And we go in and we fill out this Create New Project form. So we'll give it a title. I'll just call this Solar System. And it will auto fill in a project URL there. Of course, you could customize that if you wanted to. And we could actually provide an optional cover image. So let me click on that. And it's going to bring up our file browser. So let me go into my solar system project and go into my screenshots. And maybe I'll grab the solar system screenshot as my cover. On future projects, you could provide a gameplay video or trailer file on YouTube or Vimeo. But let's go ahead and add our screenshots for now. So I'll pick the hierarchy screenshot. And I will also add the project asset screenshot. Of course, when you're publishing a game, your screenshots will be more about the game, not the Unity interface. Now over here where it says kind of project, if I click on that, notice there's a whole variety of options here. Now for projects that you're going to include a WebGL, I recommend that you choose the HTML option. You can provide the WebGL, it'll embed it, right into the itch page. And you can also provide downloadable content, within the HTML version. So for this project, we'll pick HTML. And the next option down is release status. I'm done with this project, so I'll pick released. But in the future, you might pick in development or prototype or that sort of thing. Now, the next option for pricing, for purposes of learning in this class, just pick no payment. But in the future, you would have the option to pick something else if you so chose. The next option down is where we upload our builds. So it's looking for zip files like we created. So let me go ahead and click the upload files option. And I'll navigate back to my project folder and then into builds. And I'll pick my WebGL build first. And once again, I'm picking the zip file. So let me select that and it will upload. And for the WebGL, I want to click this file will be played in the browser. And let me upload the Windows build next. So once again, picking the zip file. And for the executable applications, I would want to select executable here and then pick, the desired operating system. So this is for Windows, so I'll pick the Windows icon and then let me upload the Mac version. Once again, picking the zip file. And for this, it's executable and I'll pick the Apple logo for the Mac. Let me scroll down a little bit here. For the WebGL, there's embed options. You could decide to embed this right into the game page, and you would specify the size here. So I believe it was something like 960 by 600. But I actually like to choose the option to click to launch in full screen for WebGL. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that instead. Now scrolling down a little bit, there's the details section, and right here you could provide a description. In the assignment, it asks you to give a little description. I'm going to say this is my solar system project. I added the following elements. So maybe I added Mercury, Venus, and Mars, and I'll make that into, a numbered list. And then I'll add my credits here. And I'll say created by Brian Wynn. Okay, whatever you really want here, but once again, generally you'll list, some description of your project, in this case, the modifications that you made and the credits. Now, a lot of these options you don't have to fill out, but you can. So genre, I could pick, for example, simulation for the solar system. You could provide tags and that sort of thing, any download and installation instructions, which probably aren't needed. There are various community options here. I would recommend just staying with the default of comments. And then there's visibility options. But right now we have to save before we could kind of really change these like we want to. So let me save and view the page. This will bring me to what the page looks like. So you can see right here is where my WebGL is. You can see my description, my credits, download options for the two platforms. But you don't see the actual screenshots. So the way to get the screenshots on there is click Edit Theme. And then over here where it says screenshots, change this to sidebar. And then our screenshots will show up kind of on the side of the page. And then, of course, click Save. And there's various other options if you want to change the color scheme and things like that. So let me go back and edit the game once again, now that I've got it saved. At the very bottom, we can now set our visibility and access options. And for purposes of the class, I want you to make this public so other people can get to your game. But you can click this configure options and you can set it to unlisted in search and browse. So nobody will actually find your game unless you provide the direct URL to the game. Now I need to click save to save all my changes. And of course I could go through and I could make additional changes here, whatever you want to do. You can edit the theme and so forth. But once you're done, you could go back and view the page. Now, ideally, you should test all your builds, once it's ready for distribution before you provide it out to the world. But for purposes of this course, at least test on the platform you're building the game to. I previously tested on Windows, so I'll use this opportunity to test the WebGL version. So let me go ahead and click Run Game. It will pop up, the new window full screen, like I said. And here I'm in my browser, and I've got my solar system project, and everything should work as expected. Here comes the comment. I can follow that. Okay, and let me just go ahead and back out of that. Okay, everything seems to be working, so I would copy the URL at the top here to the itch.io game page and submit that for the assignment hand-in. The most important thing in the final step is to follow the instructions of the assignment in terms of the required modifications, what builds you should include, how to compress your builds, how to publish the project to the internet, and how to turn it in. Please reread the assignment while you go through these steps.